Right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those of you that are joining us today. My name is Moses Mwai. I work with Development Dynamics. And in today's podcast, I am very excited and very pleased to be joined by such a great host of panelists discussing what is quite an interesting, captivating, and very important conversation, especially for those that are interested in what the future holds for us and how we, as change makers, as pioneers of making a difference, would like to position ourselves therein. Our conversation for today is observations, concerns, and opportunities for social innovation in East Africa. And for those listening to us, hearing for the first time the concept of social innovation, quite basically, it starts with a social problem, leads us into generating novel ideas that deliver transformation, that result in innovative products and services, with the idea being that we are leading to sustainable businesses and also empowered people. Today, we have, as I have mentioned, a great host of panelists that will be joining us today. And I will begin on my immediate left with Robert Kibaya, who represents the Mukono NGO Forum. We have Annette Namugosa, who is a program manager at Vijana Corps. We have Maxi Eric Gitau, who is the principal consultant at Development Dynamics. Last but certainly not least is Dennis Pato, who is the lead at Vijana Corps. And I would like to say thank you very much, Dennis, for the opportunity to have this podcast hosted at your offices at the Youth Hub in Mukono. And we are very grateful. And so now, as I begin this conversation around social innovation, I'd like to turn to you, Robert. And in your capacity within the NGO Forum, I think one of the things that we have come to recognize is that NGOs stand in the gap between social problems and these solutions therein towards the communities that we serve. And I'm just curious to hear, why does social innovation matter?
Yeah, thank you. Social innovation matter because in most cases there are social challenges in communities where we live, where the government is not able to actually cover, because as you well know, the work of the NGOs is to cover up those gaps which are not filled by the government. So you find that the government has no budget to completely cover most of those challenges. So NGOs, they come and work around covering up those challenges, especially in the education sector, health, and a number of other things. So we see that this kind of innovation in social sector is actually helping communities to continue coming up with their lives in terms of health and education. So we see a great work done by most of these NGOs, and we can have some of the examples. For example, in the islands, like we have Kome Islands, you find that there are more than 20 islands, but there's only one secondary school. No primary schools. Also, you find that maybe one is just serving most of those 20, and you find that someone has to travel from one island to another island just for education, and where he can't, then it's very difficult. So the government has no capacity, like maybe to put the boats, take the children every day to where the school can be accessed, and also has no means like putting the water ambulances which can take the several the women who are going for labor to travel from one island to another. So you find that NGOs are playing those they are covering up those gaps by providing those services which are not able to be provided by the government.
Right. Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. And I think it rings very true that yes, NGOs do stand in the gap where, you know, we have seen an inability, or at least a sustainable inability, or rather a sustainable presence of institutions to sort of close that gap.
Yeah, sure.
And I think I would like to invite you, Maxi, at this stage, being that you've had quite a bit of work within the area of consultancy, and also you have had quite a bit of work within various NGOs and at different levels. And within the East African context, there are so many innovations that we are seeing. Maybe you can state for us some of the innovations that you have come across in your experience and in your capacity as well.
Thank you, and again, going to join you in saying thank you to Vijana Corps. Well, on DDwithMaqC and on Development Dynamics, we are constantly having conversations with leaders and practitioners in the social impact space, and we feel like we've gotten a partner here in Uganda to be, you know, continuing these conversations because they are meaningful. And so to your question, Rafiki, I don't know why you call yourself Moses. It makes me feel like, you know, you have to be prime and proper.
Take off the shoes.
Yeah. So I have had the privilege over the last 25 or so years to work with various communities, to work with various foundations, to work with various governments and private sector within the East African context and beyond. And the path that I've taken has largely been, there are many sectors within social challenges. There is health, there is education, there is food security, there is livelihoods. The place I've found myself playing a huge role is in health, and much more recently, and health has so many interconnected things, so I'll mention those in a few, but also most recently in the area of democracy, peace, democratic governance, peace and security, courtesy of just the different assignments and partnerships that we find ourselves in. So in health, we've seen a number of innovations. And I will focus on two, because you asked just like a few examples. We are at a time when, after the COVID pandemic happened in 2020, it was difficult to imagine people, because of the lockdown, people wouldn't be able to access medical services the way they would have previously. Like, you feel sick, so you go directly to hospital. At this point, there's lockdown, so even hospitals are not working. The greater innovations began coming around that period, things that were being tested at small scale before, like something that we would like to call direct to consumer, such that there's a product, that there's a medical product that you need, as opposed to you having to go to a hospital. There is either an app, or there's an app or a USSD that you dial and you request for a rider to bring you the medication. That by itself is innovative. Why? Because in cases where the distance between where someone lives or where someone ordinarily spends their day and the hospital, if that distance is too long, it has been shortened by these direct-to-consumer things. And many apps have, as a result, gotten better and better in providing a whole range of services, including diagnostic services. You are able to dial a doctor and say, hey, here's how I'm feeling right now. Back then, this never used to be things that were there, but because of the nature of the world that we are living in, where revolution is happening a lot faster than you can catch up, you know, so there is AI now being used to tell, again, still in health, AI being used to tell causes of diseases so easily, being used to do a whole diagnosis and a whole prognosis thereafter. So that's one area. In the area of peace, democracy, governance and security, the region that we live in is very interesting. Issues of human rights, issues of extreme violence, and issues of getting young people who are either unemployed to become your weapons of mass destruction close to elections. Those are concerns. Those are social concerns that are happening. But actors within the space, we've been able to see them coming up together to unite and say, you know what, let's empower the local development organizations to do a lot more than just civic education or voter education, more precisely close to the election. Let us come closer to bring about a partnership that goes beyond, that starts immediately the cycle of election ends, and you are engaging young people, you're building their capacity in very innovative ways in terms of even how they will use the what is in their hands. You remember the story in the Bible, what do you have in your hands? Use that. So innovations are all over us. This is the thing I'd like to highlight as I pass the mic back to you. Innovative ideas come from the community. Innovative ideas are not the ideas that people in suits seated in a boardroom actually create. We come from an earlier conversation today where we were emphasizing community-centered design, such that yes, if you do have resources or you do have expertise, you also really need to bring to the table experience. And I feel like we are very privileged for what we do at Development Dynamics as a Pan-African social innovation think tank. We facilitate dialogue, create space for conversation, but bring three voices onto the table. The voice of experience, lived experience. For us, that's primary, because you cannot be trying to say that you are innovating or you're building an innovation just for the sake of an innovation. It has got to be resonating very much with the person on the ground. So the voice of experience is very important. We also ensure that we also bring the voice of expertise. The people who studied for these things, or the people who, because of their education or job backgrounds, they are able to understand how tech and how programming and how project management, that is an important voice. And then finally, we also ensure that in the table sits the people with influence and resources, governments, who will, be the ones assenting to the kind of laws and policies that are required to create an enabling environment for even the social innovation to take, and then also funders who have the money to back these innovations in place. So back to you, Bwana Chair.
Well, for those listening, that was not a mouthful at all. It was so simple. You know what I mean? Like, that was not gluttonous in any case. But I think some of the things that you've mentioned that are very key, especially around social innovation, is it starts at the community level, right? And that's because you're speaking into those that have the lived experience, through whom the impact of a social innovation will be seen. And I wanted to come over to you, Annette, and just speak on some of the observations that you have made within your work and your capacity as a program manager at Vijana Corps. What have you observed as the uptake of innovations that are coming to communities or from communities, Yes. How has that looked?
Thank you for that question. Addressing that question, we see that there are shifts in innovation, and these are the three that I've observed. The first one is that we have community-led social innovation. Grassroots and youth groups are innovating to the extent that they have brilliant ideas that are now shaping policy reforms, even at national and global level. So the communities, it's starting with communities. And so we have a shift that is, even the funding terrain right now is shifting to support community-led, social innovation. The other one is technology uptake. Everything right now with social innovation, there is an element of technology. And we cannot, speak about innovation right now without speaking about AI, without speaking about, the internet, without speaking about platforms that allow young people to speak out. So there is technology in each and everything, whether it's in health, whether it's in education. And we've seen this in our work. When it was COVID times, for instance, we innovated the mobile hub, but it has an aspect of technology. Even then, when it's taking services to the last mile youth. So when we speak about innovation in this space, we do not shy away from speaking about technology. But the other one is about sustainability and the environment. There is a lot that right now is being ideated within that space. So we cannot speak about anything else but how do we sustain our environment? How are we able to then innovate around issues of livelihood? How can we be able to innovate around issues that matter to the last mile or to the community, to the women? So even the concerns around innovation and the observation is that the things that we grapple with right now are actually issues to do with the community. So all social innovation and you know the ideas that that young people are having even in this space are allowing us to see that we sustain ourselves, we get a great livelihood, and we are able to impact the future. So those are the observations. And when it comes to concerns that I observe in this space, there are three major concerns. Because with the uptake of technology, we see that the infrastructure itself is a little bit expensive. So there is that concern that young people have. Yes, there is AI, there is technology, but can we be able to buy these gadgets? Can we be able to get the internet at affordable prices? Can we be able then to sustain the infrastructure that allows us then to have our voices, all our actions amplified? Then the other concern is basically around regulations. It's easy to start, it's easy to ideate, but when you start a business, for instance, in Uganda here, registering it will become a problem. You know, taxation will become an issue. You know, the government is every day cooking up a new tax here and there. So it's a, you know, it's a concern that yes, we are creative people. We are coming up with an idea upon an idea, but can we sustain those ideas in this regulatory system? Is it possible? Then the limited funding, of course, all the social organizations and even the social enterprises will tell you one of the major challenges is limited funding, because then they cannot be able to sustain those ideas. So those are the observations around social innovation that I observe in our workspace.
That there are many that are presented, but then they never get to beyond kickoff.
Yes,
so
they never get beyond 1 year.
They never get beyond 1 year.
Yes.
And so also then the scale, so yeah, because there's no scalability, the potential for impact is also undermined in that regard.
Yes.
And so I would like then to invite you, Dennis Pateau, and just try to find out, in your own position, taking leadership within Vijana Corps, how is it then that you, because you are a future thinker, you know, you're a person who has foresight, I believe, correct?
That's too much credit,
yes.
Yeah. Thank
Yes?
you.
Oh, no, I do think you have a lot of foresight. You know, I met you a few minutes ago and I was like, I can see my future through his words. But yeah, how do you caution yourself from reinventing the wheel when it comes to approaching, innovative ways of scaling the work that you do within Vijana Corps? Because again, just as you mentioned, yes, we have many ideas that come up, few that find themselves scaling up because of some of the issues that they face, but there's nothing new under the sun. So how do you ensure that you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel with whatever approach that you take?
I frankly didn't see you come from that angle.
But maybe a thought or two.
I had prepared for a completely different question. But let's try. Frankly, it is the fear of reinventing the wheel that makes me non-conformist.
All right.
It is the same that makes the institution that I lead non-conformist when it comes to the face of social innovation. And to go back to the word, right? My colleagues have already wonderfully laid the foundation, so my work is a bit easy here. There's no social innovation without a social problem. And social problems have a multiplier effect.
Correct.
You solve one, and another one will come up. And because of that, when I look at institutions like the one that I lead, and its like-minded sisters out there, I feel sorry for non-profit and social enterprise leaders who are innovative, innovation shy, or innovation lazy. Because it is exactly reinventing the wheel, or the difference between the institution that reinvents the wheel and the one that is non-conformist or innovation prone, that makes the difference between which institution goes ahead of the other. And what I'm telling you is typically the story of Vijana Core, that when we started, we were like everybody else. Said, you know, you write a project proposal, send it to some Musa Foundation, and then sit and be comfortable in the laurel and wait for that phone call or email. And we did that back and forth for about 5 years of our precious life. I had DD just made 5 years. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's we are no longer babies.
You're no longer babies.
We survived the babyhood stage of life and organizations. Yeah.
So for us, we were born into eating boiled cassava.
Oh wow. Okay.
Throughout our infancy.
Oh wow.
Until we had to say, you know, we are going to die of malnourishment.
Okay.
So we took off the gloves. And sat bare on the table and said, you know what, how do we do things differently? Thank God for the people who introduced human-centered design. It was our savior. And so we rallied the team around and said, you know, let's learn this thing. It seems a bit different, and it might give us the sunrise that we are looking for. So we rallied ourselves and learned it, and started practicing it at a really local level. You know, going to the communities and hatching the problem with them and walking through the stages of human-centered design.
Correct.
As I speak now, we are one of the, if not the first, we are one of the first few social enterprises or non-profit organizations that draws a strategic plan using the HCD or human-centered design approach. Actually, the current strategy we are implementing was drawn based on that. So the solutions are not ours. They are community generated, or generated by the people who, you used the word lived experience earlier. We use that a lot. I love it. And we are now almost 3 years into the implementation of our strategy. But new problems are coming up. So Rafiki, there will not be reinventing the wheel. Because the solution, the innovation that solved the problem of yesterday is not the same one we are going to use to solve the ones that are cropping up right now. From time to time we have to go back to the dashboard. From time to time we have to go back to the ones who have the lived experience. We call them the experts of their problems.
Correct. Yeah.
And ask, what is the new problem? And what do you think might be the solution? And it's not as simple as we think it is this. There is a process to it, right? And so once we can agree on the problem and the solution, then we can play the gymnasium of language.
Can shape it.
And shape it. And then beyond the language, now we start figuring out the tools. Beyond the tools, then the platforms. Now those we make available if the problem and the acceptable solution is clear. So that's what we do here at Vijana Co. We extend tools, platforms, and safe spaces to empower those who are unseen and unheard to be seen and heard. That is our strategic theme for these 5 years that we are about to complete. So no, yes, go ahead.
I wanted to just chime in because first of all,
Kudos.
kudos. Yeah, kudos. Yes,
Kudos.
And I'm like a sponge soaking into all of this, and the reason I say that is because again, in our practice. When I say practice, so we are part consulting and part social innovation. But in our practice across both, we've seen that human-centered design, and therefore I agree with you, we front ourselves as design design thinkers. However, on top of that, we've realized, and I like how he approached the question, you are a foresight person. So there are two other things that we add up to that. We say human-centered design is super, super crucial to ensure that the voices, experiences, needs, and aspirations of those that we are designing for are factored. We were in our practice, we don't say but and however. On top of that, we add two other things, and these other two layers have proven just as equally effective when they are a mesh.
Right.
And those two are systems thinking. Systems. We realize that every one problem is connected to so many others. Trying to solve for the problem of water availability is connected to transport, is connected to education, is connected to menstrual hygiene, is connected to livelihoods, is connected to name it.
Even climate change.
To climate change, because we are solving just one issue that the community has said, water is our big problem. If we are changing the problem through a human-centered design, and then we spruce it up with a systems approach. And because that calls for, let's go a layer deeper. Let's answer, why is this problem so much there? And if we try to change it, are we just going to just change that one? Or is there anything else that is either a lever or a driver? So there is that. And then on top of that is foresight. And we call it just foresight approach, foresight thinking. And in here we are like, let's use the hindsight that we have of, connected with the lived experience, connected with the systems approach. Let's use that hindsight to connect with the insights that we are receiving now, but let's employ our foresight. And there is scenario building, there is horizon mapping, there is scanning of potential, possible, probable futures, and then the preferable future. The preferable future is one in which you've thrown all curveballs, and you are thinking sort of like now in the next strategy of Vijana Corps, what kind of world in Mukono, in Uganda, in East Africa, in Africa, and as far broadly as you would like to, to extend impact to, what kind of world is there? Not currently. Because tomorrow, the rate of innovation, the rate of change has never been as fast as it is. Before we say, hey, before we understand, before we put systems, things have changed. So being able to just design strategies and our strategic approaches with a foresight lens, thinking through everywhere and all the kind of possibilities also takes time. And we've learned that we actually do not take assignments where we are told, hey, come facilitate for us a strategic workshop. We are like, no. A strategic workshop is not what you need. Hold on. You don't need a strategy planning workshop. What do you want? To change, you need a year of planning. It is a year. I mean, you're in your third of the fifth year, right? Now, as you start to think about the next one now, with like a midterm review and then the next stages, by the time this other one comes, this whole process has been feeding into what the future will look like. So there's an amalgamation of these three very key principles to addressing social innovation. And I will shut up because I am passionate, and if I'm not stopped, I'll keep talking.
And if Rafiki is not careful, he might just lose the podcast.
Let me add something to these voices. There's a book that is called Still Like an Artist. And it just alludes to the fact that there is nothing new under the sun, but we can still, like artists, studying what is in the field and why certain things have failed, why certain problems are still persisting, allows us then to think about the solutions. So sometimes we do not study our fields, we do not study the sectors we are in, and we just want to jump in there with a solution and think it will work. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes things have failed for a reason. So why have they failed for a reason before? And why can we then take those same things that have failed and innovate around them? It doesn't have to be a new idea. It can be the same idea, but done differently. Maybe implemented differently. Maybe with different people. It can be just as simple as getting the right people on board, or getting a different platform. Perhaps you used LinkedIn, now you have to switch to TikTok, to get the young people, So sometimes we have to ideate around the same old ideas, but innovatively. But we can only do that if we think like thieves, or think like artists, and we are able to do that. But the other thing is following up. Most of us we don't want to follow up on the ideas that we have thrown out in the field. We want it to work perfectly. But if we can follow up and ask, the experiences of people who interact with these ideas, then we can be able to learn from those people and be able to re-innovate. So it's thinking in unconventional ways. It's thinking newness. It's thinking that we can be able to do the same old thing, but in a different way, and give it a different feel. And then we can be able to get those same things that did not work to actually work. And some of those ideas are very, very brilliant. Someone, wanted to set up a shop. It did not work in that location, but you can set it up elsewhere and it works in another location perfectly. So the idea is for us to be creative enough to think like artists, to think very fast, to think where is the market, to think where are the people, to think what would they want to see. What would they want to hear? Even in this space of civil society, where are the young people? Where are they gathering? If it is in those, bars, young people love to drink. Or if it's in football, can I get my, my activity at a football match? Will I get the voices? If it's the young women and they love to fetch water at a certain well at a certain time, can I get them in those spaces? Thinking differently about the process makes it easy for you to then re-innovate and not just reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, just to add my 2 cents to Annette and MaqC. I told you were losing the podcast.
No. But it's good. I think it's good to lose it to passion. So,
I just wanted to throw my 2 cents on what MaqC mentioned here about the intersection between foresight thinking, social innovation, and systems thinking. And as we was talking about that, I was just mentally drawing the tricycle Venn diagram and thinking about the intersection point. And the word is there screaming, innovation. Which reminded me about what one author said about a big company that invited him to write a book on business ethics. And he said, no, I cannot write a book on business ethics. And he said, why not? And he said, there's no such thing as business ethics. I said, what do you mean? He said, there's only ethics. Which is why I'm also thinking, why are we saying social innovation? There's only innovation. And why should it be social? Businesses need innovation.
Absolutely.
Everyone, every corner, government needs innovation. They're stealing because they're running out of ideas. They're increasing taxes exorbitantly because they're running out of ideas. They're not being innovative. Okay, some are thieves. We can call it for what it is.
They're innovating in that regard.
There are new styles of.
They are repurposing resources.
They have a foresight way of thinking about it. A whole systems thinking. I'm joking. I kid.
Yeah. So it's like I mentioned, whether you're a business or even an individual. I like that Annette used the example of a shop. How are you going to outcompete the competition if you're not innovative? Yeah? And you see, innovation is free. And it is permission free. You don't need anyone's permission to be innovative. You don't have to start with these big things that Maxi is talking about, systems thinking.
The buzzwords.
The buzzwords.
Yeah, just
The buzzwords.
Yeah, and this is just for especially our last mile audience, to say that the ingredients, all the ingredients are within you. Yeah. These buzzwords were carved out of what you already know or what you're already doing. The words were not born, right?
No.
They were born out of what you are already doing.
Design used to be done way back. It just was never called that.
Somebody simply harvested it and gave it language.
For academics.
For academic purposes. Yeah. So that's the little that I wanted to add. But you
As I invite Robert, who seems to have a burning question.
Yeah, sure.
And remark to share.
I'm just adding on what Janet has actually built out. Things to do with the...
Oh, sorry. I think you need to...
learning from the past experience. We see that most of the social actors, they work in isolation. They don't have a knowledge base, and that is a very big problem. For example, you see like these companies, for example, the phone companies, for them, they capitalize on what already done, so they innovate along that line. But you find that most of the social actors, you find that maybe, for example, Vijana is here, is doing something, but he's not sharing that knowledge. And then another social actor is somewhere, is trying to work around the same issue, is not picking on the knowledge already developed, because there's nowhere it can be picked. So that is a very big problem. So social actors, they need to develop a knowledge base where they can share with others. Otherwise, there will be just reinventing things which are already done. Yeah. So if you pick on something which was already done, you just have to improve on that, and then also another one, and also another one. For example, like these phones, we started with the big one, you remember? Then someone say, oh, this one is not portable enough. Then it developed something small, like that. Now we have the smartphones. Now you see somebody has already developed something, because now we've been using the wire charger to charge. So another one has developed wireless charging. You don't have to carry so much with you. So you see, those are innovations, but based on the already developed knowledge. Yeah. So we need to encourage knowledge development and create knowledge base where we can actually pick from.
Right. I wanted to pick up on something that was mentioned. Malnourishment is something that you had presented as an outcome that resulted in being innovation shy, you know. And so I think those are two words that you presented, where you're malnourished in your approach towards innovation, and that where you do have innovative ideas, your presentation of them is in a manner that shows that you're sort of innovation shy. And it seems as though that I think one of the things I'm hearing very strongly is that it could also be predicated upon your mindset, either as a leader or as an organization, whatever the case may be.
And sometimes, just to interrupt you, sometimes it's not the leader or the institution. Sometimes it's the confines within which you have chosen to play.
Right.
I deliberately mentioned we are non-conformist at Vijana. So even the partners that we approach, we sit on the table and have a very point-blank conversation and say, this thing we are going to do it the Vijana way. So either your money is ours or it is not, but we don't do things the traditional way. And so even when you look at the kind of partners that we have, a number of them are very experimental in nature and by design. So it's just to underscore the point that sometimes, yes, it still comes back to the leader in conforming to the tradition or the demands of the partner to say, this is how I want you to do this. Our innovation and programming is not partner driven. We always, all the partners we have, we come to the table and say, this is how we do things. And if they have an alternative approach, which in a way, yes, we are happy to discuss it and see if we can meet halfway. But to say we abandon all that what we know how to do, the way we know how to do it, and go with the partner because of money is something that we have refused as Vijana Co. And with humility.
And I'm curious, how do you get there? Sorry.
Please do, go ahead.
How do you get there as actually as a community-focused local development organization? How do you get to the place? So there is, you have as yourself and as the organization very well understood the aspect of power imbalances, where funders are givers and therefore fundees or investees are receivers. There is already a power
imbalance.
Imbalance. Where you are now, you matured to a place where you say, let's be on the same table.
Yeah.
Let's talk. You have resources that are needed.
Yeah.
You have some ideas that are great and you probably have funded elsewhere and they have worked. We have the context, we have the contextual experience, we have proven models. But that takes a while. What would you tell organizations, local development organizations that are starting, that are not yet there? How do you get there? How do you get to grow the confidence and wherewithal that we can say no to this, and at what expense as well?
Of course there is a price, and thanks for partly answering the question. And this is not only for local development organizations, it's also for the partners, our resource partners, especially those that are still very traditional in their thinking. What I tell people is, whether you want it or not, this work is a business.
It is a business.
We have something to sell, and you have the money to buy it. And as a social enterprise or a non-profit, my clients are two. You with the resources, and then the people that I am actually going to deliver the service that you're going to buy from me. Okay? So in our case, there is donor A to whom I'm going to pitch and say, after talking to the final consumer of our product, which is media technology and social innovations to amplify their voices, we centered on problems X, Y, Z, and this is the way the final consumer said we can solve it. Are you willing to buy our product? Then it is either yes or no. If we are mission aligned, they will buy, they will pay for it. And sometimes there's a bit of haggling. I'm going to give you 20,000. Oh, 20,000, yes, negotiation. 20,000 will not do the work. You have to give us 30,000 for 6 months. Okay? So they are, whether you like it or not, as a non-profit, and this is the mistake people make. People think non-profit, you should be dumb. You should be lazy. You're taking free money. You're not taking free money.
Sure.
Somebody is paying for your service. You have sold that service to two clients, the donor
and the consumer
and the final consumer. And you have to deliver faithfully to both.
Yeah.
Because if you don't deliver faithfully to the final consumer, it's going to catch up with you.
Correct.
If you deliver excellently to the final consumer, but you don't document and report it well, you will look like you stole the money and you under-delivered. It will catch up with you.
Correct.
Yes.
Finally, still in the spirit of, do you have what to sell? That is for me the final question that I usually ask people, even especially in the face of social innovation. What are you selling? As a non-profit, to go back to your point of do not reinvent the wheel, what are you selling that I have not already bought from somewhere else? Or that I cannot already get from somewhere else freely? Okay? And that digs, I hope you have a question on sustainability. It digs deep also into the question of how long are you going to be selling it? Or how long are you going to go on serving the final consumer if there is no buyer for your product? Crucial conversations that we need to have.
Crucial.
Yeah.
I think I would like to, if I may, invite you, Robert, for just two things. In your capacity within the NGO forum, I would like to understand how it is that you think around facilitating the confidence within which organizations would sort of inspire themselves into innovation, right? And would also, in that regard, also be protected from the danger of duplicating a lot of the efforts that are being done, to where a funder will say, I have already bought this from somebody else, as has been mentioned. So it's those two things primarily. How do we facilitate confidence within the organizations that we work with, so that it's not always a case of business as usual, so that we're seeing scale and sustainability in the impact that we wish to see to the second client that we're dealing with, in this case being the consumer.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Our facilitation in most cases, as an NGO forum, there are two. One, we look at the environment under which the NGOs are operating. Then also providing the platform where they can freely share with each other. So when it comes for the environment, we advocate for a favorable environment through which the NGOs they can operate. So anything which is actually scaring a free participation of NGOs, then we make sure that we have the dialogue through different channels, policy, then also other departments which we can actually engage. And then on the other issue, under NGO forum, we have our members are grouped into thematic groups. We have agriculture, we have women and children, human rights. There are around 10 thematic groups. So these groups, they come and then they have their leaders, and then those groups, they share knowledge within those dockets where they have the expertise. Yeah, so basically that's what we do as NGO Forum in order to have these social innovations facilitated, protected, and also promoted. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I think Annette, also as we come to a close of the conversation soon, but this is a pretty interesting one. So my dear audience, please be patient. But I wanted to find out, because Dennis, you alluded to the fact that within your strategy process, HCD was the approach that was used.
Yes.
HCD is a process that is known to be destructive within the beginning, before it becomes something wherein we are seeing a bit of either symmetry or just alignment as you head into implementation. And I believe this applies very strongly to the work that you do, especially as a program manager. And I wonder then how you manage how do you call it, the disaster stage, if for lack of a better word, that exists, especially where you're dealing with the client and you're having to also, I wouldn't want to use the word satisfy, but based off of the negotiation that you had, that you're using the resources to serve the client, there is a parameter within which you must play around. And so how do you manage that?
The ambiguity.
The ambiguity. That's your word. I wasn't thinking ambiguity, but if it applies in this conversation. Yeah, but I'm just curious if that is something that you have faced, and maybe what thoughts you've had around addressing that.
Well, it's actually a very good question, and it has been a struggle for us. But the issue is to be continuously engaging with both parties, both the young people that we do serve, but also the partners that do support us. And further than that, build collaborations. We cannot be the only one doing the same thing. So how do we build collaborations with other civil society organizations to create greater impact? If it's activities or programs within the communities, we can be able to leverage on the strength of all the other partners in those locations to be able to do the work that we do. So that there are so many touchstones to the young people and to the impact. So sometimes the issue is attribution now, because now the young person has been touched by Vijana, has been touched by ActionAid, has been touched by maybe Mempro, and that young person is growing up to be something within the community. But we don't shy away from that, because as the impact is what we look at. We don't look at just the outcomes, the numbers, how many people have we trained, but we look at the sustainability. So for us, it's the continuous engagement, because youth work is very interesting. It's like going 10 steps forward and 2 steps behind, and again 2 steps again, and then you go back in front. So creating a lasting impact is not just something immediate, it's a journey. And you have to be committed to that journey, because there will always be failures along the way, but there will also be very small incremental changes. They are very small, but at the end of the day, you realize that they are actually bigger changes. So it's that touchstone, being able to collaborate with stakeholders, even the local government. I think most civil society shy away from collaborating with them, because we think of them as, against everything that we are, but most of them is because they do not understand what we are doing. So collaborating with them from the onset, encouraging them to attend their several activities and actions within the communities, and being then able to be at the forefront allows us then to have that sustainable impact, even when we are not there. As an organization, young people are meeting in groups, young people are discussing, young people are ideating, young people are sending in their concepts. This is what we want to do. So at the very end, there is that continuous engagement, because then it can be able, it's a process then that can be able to sell itself. Because now we don't have to tell the story for the young people can tell their stories. And now the donor can be able to see it and say, oh, okay, this is the model that they are running. So it is not Vijana that is telling the story anymore. Yeah, the young people on social media will say, no, Vijana supported us to do this activity. We don't have to post it. And then on the other end, the donor says, oh, actually the funds are working, because that's the model we have said we are going to do. Avail platforms, avail tools, avail safe spaces. So are the young people themselves telling the stories for us? Are they saying that, hey, because Vijana gave us a platform, this is what we have been able to do with this platform. They availed us these tools. Now we are able to do this and do this and do this. So in the end, it's a process and it's a journey. Yes, it's destructive, because sometimes you just want to, get those numbers. You just want to be able to report on what is happening. But if we can allow the process to go on and trust that process, then we can be able to win at the end. It's not a one-day thing, but it's a journey.
It's not a linear process.
Yes.
It's not a linear process.
So before you come to Max, I know you were coming to
I wasn't coming to Max. I was looking to see if he's paying attention.
Oh, he is.
I'm joking. I was actually going to, but I think you have something to say.
Thank you very much. I just want to piggyback on what Annette has just shared, and your question and her response just reminded me about what is that? When you talked about the different touch points, it reminded me about a conversation we had in the morning, and my submission here might now annoy Max, our organizational health doctor. Why? Because there was the question of, have you deviated from what you said you were going to do as an organization? And for our part, for my part, I said, no, we have not deviated. But that doesn't mean we are doing exactly we are doing things in exactly the same way. So the vision and mission and strategic goal are the same. But the tactics change along the way. The tools we must be adaptive. Yeah? If you find out today that since we said, we agreed with the young people that this is the problem, and we said for us to solve that problem, we need to give you a voice and a platform to express that voice. and we said we are going to do it via the mobile hub. And then 1 year down the road, we find out, okay, that's not working. Then we find out that maybe it's cheaper and more efficient to do live broadcasts, or to do the small tactical changes. In my view, and this is the part that should annoy you, is that I must not wait for a mid-term review report to adapt.
Yeah, learning and adaptation is continuous.
You learn and adapt continuously, which is a mistake that I believe that a lot of traditional institutions make. They wait to fail expensively, whereas we prefer to fail with flair. Okay? We want to fail beautifully. We want to fail adaptively. Find out that this is not working, fix it. When midterm comes, we shall report and say, we started with this, we found out it wasn't working, we changed. We haven't stolen anybody's eggs. We are still as innovative as we wanted to be, and we are still going to where we said we wanted to go. Don't wait until it is too expensive to change. And when probably the most useful stakeholders who would have helped you with that change are no longer available to you. The experts of the problem, they might have moved on. So why not adapt and change with them while you have the ripe, beautiful opportunity?
Right.
Yeah.
I think I would like to invite your steaming self, because I believe he's made you very angry. But this is, I think, something that I think that you have experienced within your journey in consultancy. And I think it is an approach that you take where adaptability is almost the story of your game. And it is most frequently expressed in your facilitation process. But I'd also like to understand from you, as part of your closing remarks, which I will spread to the rest of us, so but starting with you, is perhaps you also have another thought to share. I can see that you have something to share.
I'm waiting for the question. I just look like I'm on your marks.
I'm like, if this table was not in the way, he would be gone. But I'm curious to know, the expectation that an organization seeking the guidance of a consultant will have an element of it being linear, and that will be reflected in whatever may be presented within the scope of work as a deliverable for which you have to commit to, being the consultant that presented a proposal and said, I'm going to do this work for you. How is it that you would approach managing such an expectation, especially for the ethics related to the work that you do? I want impact, not just result of what a deliverable was. The deliverable may not speak into the desired future that you want. How do I make this known to you as a client? You being the consultant, what would you say?
No, that's actually, again, I did not see that coming, and that's not the easiest question to answer, because we work together, so you know how much we contend with it. We consider ourselves an innovation think tank that supports especially investors or investees to think through their strategy, to build capacity that is required to implement that strategy, and also to measure the impact of that strategy. Now, that is simple, or maybe complex. I'm not so sure anymore about the choice of words I'm using. But in the process, we have come to learn two things. One, and you said it's closing remarks, so I'll finish with this. One, that the place where our team, and we've been growing from a team of 2 at the beginning of 2019 to now a team of 10 full-time and 2-3 other additional affiliates, we realized that our biggest mandate, and I say this with fear and trembling, our biggest mandate is to implement change within our own organization, within our own firm. As a consultant in this space, we get to be with and hear and support so many people, and it's such a privilege to do so. It is such a privilege, because whether you're young or old, you're constantly on the learning And that by itself, I wouldn't choose genuinely another career path, not for myself, and mostly perhaps also for most of the people that I work with. This is exciting because today we will be with someone, handling a health strategy. Tomorrow will be someone handling a climate strategy, and they all present such different things. And we too have got to remain, to maintain the fidelity of playing on two sides, sort of like a platform where we are connecting demand and we are connecting supply, funders and where it is needed. As we commit to such fidelity, it comes with ethical questions. At times you can be approached by a client who wants a strategy within a short time. You hear what I've already said, what we bounce back and say, please, maybe what this meeting you're thinking will result to, and we won't mind facilitating it for you, but let's change the expectation that you expected a strategy. Perhaps you will only get clarity on the direction, not a full strategy, because that will require a bit of time. So we've become a lot more confident in saying the thing that you want, first of all, you have designed this TOI as people in a table desiring maybe to expand our funding base with a new strategy, etc., etc. When you bring everyone on the table and say we are co-creating, we plan as though nothing will change. So we plan the detail, but then when we enter into the room, we act as though we did not plan, because we are like, there is only a conversation that those ones in the room will have today. And that conversation is the one that will shape. We also like to extend those conversations beyond just those ones who have the privilege to come into a room. We are saying, all right, there is a strong voice that we sensed that was coming, and are we blind? Is there a blind spot to that particular voice? Do we need to go and, spend a little bit more time in that community, sleep where they sleep, go to the dance club that they go to in the night, understand how they cross a river? Do we need to understand these issues? Do we need to embed ourselves? And mostly we say we don't do that as the consultants. We want to empower the organizations to be able to do that, because again, the product of our work, and we are often cautious about this, we don't want our product to be a good well-written strategy, and we write very good strategies. Say, please come and see. We don't want a good strategy placed somewhere in a shelf. We need it implementable, we need it actionable, we need it, even more importantly, owned. So our process is skills transfer. And at times it looks dumb when you say that, because you're like, hey, you want to retain as much of the cutting-edge skill that we have. We are like, no, then that is not of impact. We want, yes, we are retaining, but also it's a democratized world. Information is accessible at any point. The style, though, is different. We will fuse all these things. We will do deep listening. We will facilitate an open space for dialogue, and that's very, very important. Now, because the journey itself it could be looking one direction, or the scope is being presented, and immediately it starts opening you up to new realities. We are aware that those new realities are realities that we need to be discussing with our clients very regularly. The process becomes messy at some point. Actually, one of our metrics of success was that workshop difficult to facilitate? Was there a point where you felt there was darkness, or at least most of and then did you land it in a way that showed, oh, this actually makes sense, that there was a bumpy road? If it is too smooth, then we are not questioning the right things that need to be questioned. If it is not uncomfortable, there is someone who is not doing their work well, especially as a facilitator. And I can say this comfortably. If you have a facilitator for strategy or organizational capacity that you like their work a lot, kudos. However, if they don't make you feel uncomfortable, if you do not feel that things they are asking of you are a little bit more difficult, question question if you're receiving the kind of service that you should be receiving. It ought to be uncomfortable. There's something I'd written here as I close because I don't want to talk
Just
again.
go ahead.
I will just quote it the way I was saying. The one thing that we have learned, we need to change ourselves. We also need to understand that the organization that is bringing us in, we are not in their world fully. They are dynamics. So we have a number of consulting days. We will visit, we will talk with you, but immediately we do, things will change.
True.
We will not be able to keep track with that.
Yeah.
Hence why we do the skills transfer. So that you understand how we would be approaching this from an external critical friend, and then you are able to embody the same principles. And for us, as I conclude, as a pastor does many times, learning, adaptation continuously, we say that's very important, and therefore we are constantly asking the question, what are the 2 or 3 questions we are trying to track in the process? So we are constantly asking ourselves and also the client that if there was nothing that this process completes, will it help you to have either sharpened your learning question or to have enabled you to begin tracking that question? And some of the questions are, is our model bringing impact? Is what we believe to be the objective that matters the most to the ground, have we tested and retested and refined and validated that theory of change or pathway to scale or whatever it is? Is it we enable the right questions to be asked? And that's really, I guess, that's what gives us utmost fulfillment as an insights hub, as an impact accelerator, and as a resource enabler in the process of our work.
Great.
That is, brilliant to say the least. But anyway, Annette, just as part of the closing remarks, I think one of the things that has been spoken of so strongly within this conversation is the experts of innovation are the experts of the problems that are, that they themselves are facing. And a lot of times, again, speaking into innovation, shyness, and laziness, there is that requirement for those that hold positions like you do to inspire confidence and agency, not necessarily within organizations, but actually within communities.
Yes.
And I wonder what advice you would give to a fellow program manager that is dealing with communities, that is trying to suss out inventions and innovations from communities. How can I inspire them to take up agency, to solve the problems that they face? Because nobody can impose a solution, they can create it.
I would advise that person to immerse themselves in the community. It's difficult to do this work if you don't have passion for it. If you do not wake up and say, hey, I will do this work even without pay. So it ceases to be a job for me, for instance. It's just work. It's something that I would do even if I wasn't in this space, in Vijana. Yeah? If you threw me in another place, I'll still continue to do the same work of social innovation, social impact. What is it that you are doing? So I would advise that person to immerse themselves or get out of that space, because it becomes difficult for you to do a job, day in, day out, if you are not really, really passionate about it. So you rather go and do something else. But if you are in this space and you are a program manager, you're a program assistant, you're doing something around programs for young people or for women or for elderly, whatever it is that you're doing, then you have to love what you're doing. And that means you sleep overnight thinking, okay, how can I be able to, work with a community? How can I be able to listen to them? How can I be able to be able to not just listen, but to learn from them? Because also it takes a place of humility, by the way. Yeah, sometimes we go into communities and you're thinking, we went into a community like Pakwach, West Nile, and you're thinking these people are poor. But hey, they are telling you they are not poor, we are not poor. So how do you handle yourself and humble yourself to the extent that you realize that they're actually not poor? You ought to learn from them. because they have the solutions, they have the ideas, they have the creativity. But if you are not humble enough, then you cannot be able to draw that wisdom out of them. You will leave that community and think, oh God, these people have nothing to add on to this program. But if you're to humble yourself and listen to them, then you can be able to actually develop programs with them. So I would advise that person to immerse or get out. And the other thing is, without innovating, you die out. You just die. Either your programs are not impactful, either they are not aligning properly, and then, it goes to sustainability. It affects the funding, and so if you do not, if you're not able to creatively innovate around the problems within the community, then automatically you're also dying out, and it affects everyone, not just you as a program manager, but the institution and other institutions that would have benefited from your institution. So it is better for that person to either, learn, be humble enough, and then be able to immerse themselves within the community and into that work that they are doing.
Right, and I think I love the idea that you present of impose. I understood a sense of what you said as a program manager, you will impose a solution as opposed to invite a solution from the community that you're dealing with. And using that sort of relationship, I'd like to invite your final closing comments around something that we've been talking around, and this is power dynamics. One of the things that the NGO Forum, I believe, presents for NGOs is strength in numbers, and it creates this sense of power that individual NGOs may necessarily lack in their individuality, but by virtue of the fact that they are involved as a collective, they then have this bargaining ability, especially in the table of negotiation. And I wonder what role the NGO Forum can play, will play, or does play in establishing that strength and that force for NGOs to be in a position to, because they're dealing with the communities, they have a justified point of the fact that this is the impact story that the community is telling us, and this is the selling point we have to whomever is going to finance us. But sometimes their voice is not strong enough to present that story. How, I may ask, would the NGO Forum be in a position to put that power into that voice, to allow this to take place, to facilitate that to take place?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think as NGO Forum, with our members, we just have to work on the mindset, as to encourage them as social actors, not to just think of like developing social solutions, but also to have a sense of business around those solutions that they have developed, for sustainability part of it. Because you see, like most of these solutions are developed, but there are no strategies of developing them into businesses which can sustainably keep them going. So I see like our members on the loose side. They just come up with the solutions, and then they go and again they look for donations from funders. Yet these solutions, if they develop business strategies around them, they can be able to move on. And maybe also, like in your forum, like we can't, mostly like maybe I can't say that we develop capacities, but maybe to attract partners which can actually build the capacities of our member organizations in those areas where they need skills and knowledge to carry out with those innovations they have developed around those issues that are affecting the communities. Thank you.
Right. And now, in closing, with our host with the most, Dennis, I think I'd like to close this with you. I think one of the principles that is strongly preached in your approach in the work that you're doing at Vijana Corps is fail fast but fail forward. And I do believe it is a powerful approach for leaders to take, especially of organizations. But it's also important for a leader to remain connected to the team that they are leading, so that at the end of the day it always remains a collective, not necessarily like a leader. And I wonder what advice you would give for fellow leaders to ensure that they are in a position to pace their future aspirations with their current disposition, to ensure that they are, yes, I am moving forward, but I'm moving with who I currently have, because sometimes that could easily be a restriction to the future that we seek to sort of capture, And so you would be like, that's where we need to go, but this is who we're going with. How can I reconcile this two?
Why are you always asking me questions?
Because you answer very sharply. You answer so sharply, I'm saying he's the perfect fit.
Again, I had prepared my own closing question. But here it is, right? You ask a very good question, and my message is one. The day I discovered in this organization, Vijana Corps, that I am surrounded by people who are way more brilliant than I am, way more innovative than I am, way more hardworking than I am, was the day I found my peace. As I speak now, I am the most useless person in this institution. I just happen to carry a name, which I'm happy to lend the team. But all these wonderful things you see, I can't take credit for them. It is the team behind Vijana Corps. Of course, I provide leadership, good leadership, right?
Yes.
Right.
She was like,
yes.
What date of the month is it?
Right, so I provide the leadership, and I lend my name for the institution to use in the spaces where it is still respected. But I am not the work, it is the team. And how we got there was through the intentionally and consistently building a relationship of trust with the team, to bring them on board and help them understand that, brilliant as my idea may be, I can't do it on my own. So I'm going to need each and every one of you. And don't take my idea or my suggestion as the gospel truth. It is just a suggestion. Now, let's all put ours on the table, and we mingle them together and work together and see what we can serve on the other side. And so that's my simple message to my fellow leaders out there. Can I now give my closing remarks?
Oh, that wasn't it. Okay, cool. Yeah, go ahead. That's powerful.
So thank you. In my closing remarks, I want to pronounce 3 deaths that are going to happen to social innovation organizations or non-profit organizations out there if they do not wake up. The first death is you will surely die if you're still going to depend 100% on donor funding. The death, the death is nigh.
Soon.
It is soon. You will die. We can't even debate that. The second death is if you don't embrace innovation as soon as yesterday, you will surely die. Okay? The third death, now I need to remind myself. Yeah. The third death is, and the way I think of it is my personal philosophy now, given the span of time that I've spent doing this work every single day, every single night almost, is if you believe it works and you're passionate about it, fund it yourself. you start by funding it yourself.
Sure.
Don't approach this space, this work with a parasitic mindset, unless you surely are a for-profit business. Even in which case, you would still start by funding it yourself.
Sure.
And so I think that is the one mindset that non-profit organizations have got really wrong. People approach this space as a space for employment, as a space for money. But if you surely believe that whatever it is that you're up to works, and you're passionate enough about it, put your own skin in the game. And if you don't, that is the third death. You will die.
Yeah, that's true.
Eventually. What holds us in this space, what keeps us not competing, but working favorably among an ocean of the rest of us, is that mindset. We don't approach it from an employment perspective. We love what we do, and we put our skin in the game, whether in terms of money or time or what. We are beyond what is the donor bringing. We are beyond that. And that's why, to your earlier question, we can have courageous conversations with resource partners.
Yeah.
And I feel I did not answer the question about the risk and so on. That for us, that nexus and the ability and opportunity to courageously have those conversations comes also at a good time when the global north is beginning to speak to the global south about localization of aid.
Which is a funny thing when you say,
Yeah.
that is the global north that's beginning to speak.
Yeah.
I think that's a conversation, in my view, that we need to drive. It cannot be localization if, for lack of a better term, Mzungu says, hey, we need to understand, the new word is localization.
Yeah.
Like, already it's a swapped.
Responsible funding.
Yeah, exactly. You know, they're giving it all these flowery words.
Yeah.
I think, just in agreement with you, we in Africa have really what it takes to take off. And those deaths are deaths that are going to happen.
Yeah.
But there are people who are, I keep saying, for every death there is a new life.
Yes.
So there is also,
and some deaths are absolutely necessary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm calling the police for this individual that has stolen my podcast. No, but I think are there?
So in conclusion, if you do not die, you might live, or you might die and rise again. Should either be the case.
Resurrection.
Yes. Then you need to embrace innovation in programming, because that is what will set you apart from the rest. You need to embrace innovation in your financial model and sustainability planning. That is what will keep you going beyond donor money. You need to embrace innovation in governance. That is what will give you and sustain your credibility and legitimacy in the sector and beyond. You need to embrace innovation in operations. That is what will make your team love the institution they work for and do things flawlessly, my opinion.
Thank you so much. And I think in closing this conversation, if there are some gems that may have passed over your head, somewhere in between you listening to this, I advise you to rewind all the way to the beginning, just so that you find out how this gem appeared in the first place. You might pick up other gems during this conversation. I think this has been cutting edge, to say the least. I think this has been inspiring, and I think this has been very directional for those that would, if that's a word, for those that would be keen to listen to what has been spoken of today. And I am extremely grateful for the panelists that have graced this place, that have graced this occasion, with the insights that you have shared. And in this case, quite passionately, to the point that at some point I said, okay, fine, you have taken agency and ownership of the conversation, have it, but have it because what you're bringing out is something that needs to be heard and needs to be listened to, especially for the sake of the lasting change that we would like to see within our society around us. And I then at this point would like to conclude our conversation for the day, believing and trusting that innovation is no longer enigmatic to those that are listening to this story, but it is something that you can actually approach in a step-by-step process. Do reach out to us through our communication within this podcast if there is a further clarification and or insights that you would like to understand concerning the conversation that we've had, and we would be happy to continue to peel back the layers on the elements and components of this conversation. And also, if you feel like you want to contribute to what the conversation has had, we do invite you to do the same. We will have this released as a joint thing between Development Dynamics and Vijana Corps, so you can look out through our socials for the same. Otherwise, I am very grateful for those that have taken the time to listen to this to the very end. Thank you, and may God bless you with whatever future endeavors that you have. And that is how I say goodbye.